They exiled us. We rose. They feared our survival. We conquered the stars. But in our greatest victory, we opened the door to something ancient, something waiting. We thought we were the rulers of the galaxy, but what if we were only its next vessel? Stay with us to find out how it all ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The Galactic Council believed they had triumphed when they delivered their decree. No human would ever again be allowed to step foot on alien soil. They severed our trade routes. They closed off our space lanes. From their ivory thrones in orbit, they watched us and laughed. To them, it was over. Humanity had been broken, discarded, buried beneath the weight of interstellar law. But they forgot something crucial: humans don't stay buried. We dig, we climb, we fight. And when we're cornered, we take everything we need. I wasn't anyone important the day the ban was announced. Just a mechanic. A nobody. Fixing ancient freighters in a rust-choked junkyard on Titan, trying to scrape together enough credits for a one-way ticket off-world. Politics meant nothing to me. Galactic Council speeches even less. But when the broadcast came in, when I saw the smug, blue-skinned face of High Chancellor Vrex smirking down at Earth like we were a swarm of pests, I knew something in me had changed. We, the Galactic Council, he said, his voice oozing with contempt, have determined that humanity is unfit for further integration into the interstellar community. Effective immediately, all human vessels are denied access to Council space, trade hubs, and colonial territories. Any human caught attempting to enter restricted zones will be detained or executed on sight. This is the price of your kind's aggression, your refusal to follow order. The message spread like wildfire. For decades, humanity had been clawing its way into the galactic marketplace, running freight, cutting deals, establishing colonies on far moons. We were still the new kids, but we were making progress. That scared them. Not because we were stronger. Hell, the Arden stood 10 feet tall and could punch through starship plating. The Varen could melt a city from orbit without breaking a sweat. The Zari could outthink an entire war campaign before the first shot was fired. No, it wasn't our tech or our strength that threatened them. It was our persistence, our refusal to stay dead. They had seen it too many times, humanity pushed to the edge, outnumbered, outgunned, outclassed, and still we won. The ban wasn't about justice. It was about containment, but it was never going to work. The first spark of resistance wasn't a grand fleet or a political movement. It was me, a greasy wrench in my hand, standing beside the cracked engine of a smuggler's ship and whispering, "Screw it. Let's go." Captain Rook was the first to take the risk. He wasn't human, Zeriborn, with that ever-shifting insectoid shell and eyes like cold fire. A schemer through and through. He saw opportunity where others saw ruin. "The Council's too big," he said one night as we watched the NAV charts flicker. "Empires think in fleets, systems, borders. But you humans, you think small. And right now, small wins." That was how it started. A dozen humans, scattered through the void, finding cracks in the Council's great wall and jamming our boots through. Some stole tech. Others corrupted trade ledgers, hacked navigation systems, rewired security drones. Me? I kept the engines running, made sure the right people got where they needed to be, no matter how deep into the dark they had to go. And then the whispers began. Ghost fleets. Ships no one could track. Trade routes that didn't appear on any official map. Smugglers and runners moving like smoke between the stars, impossible to find, impossible to stop. By the time the Council realized what was happening, the ban was already meaningless. It took us 5 years to turn the tide. The Council's first mistake had been thinking we needed them to survive. When they shut us out of their stations, we built our own, hidden deep in dead zones, past the reach of their sensors. When they locked down the trade lanes, we partnered with the criminals and outlaws they'd abandoned. When they outlawed our ships, we stole theirs, refitted them, and turned them against their former masters. And when the time came, when our first real fleet emerged from the void, larger and faster and deadlier than anything the Council imagined, we made them regret giving us those 5 years. The Battle of Orion Prime was the breaking point. The Council's flagship, Judgment's Wrath, had been stationed in high orbit, its weapons trained on the largest human colony below. They were preparing for annihilation. One final strike to end the human problem. Then the ghost fleets arrived. Hundreds of ships. Every one of them human-born or human-built, enhanced with stolen tech, running impossible maneuvers and breaking every rule of engagement the Council had ever written. We hit them from all sides. Outflanked. Outthought. Outfought. And we didn't just win. We obliterated them. The Council fell within a year. Some species surrendered. Others fled. A few tried to resist, but it was too late. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. Now we stood where they had once stood. Their fleets flew our banners. Their throne world flew our flag. Their laws were ash. And as I sat in the High Chancellor's seat, once Frex's, now mine, looking out over the stars that now answered to us, I couldn't help but laugh. They thought banning us would bury us. Now we own everything. And we were only just getting started. The galaxy hadn't just changed, it had flipped inside out. The Council's mighty bureaucracy, built over centuries, collapsed like dry leaves in a firestorm. Where once 100 species had bickered and debated over trade disputes and minor border skirmishes, now there was only one authority, the human empire. But ruling wasn't the same as conquering. The Council had fallen, yes. Their fleets either destroyed or absorbed into ours. Their planets under our command. But their people still lived. Zari spy masters, ardent warlords, Varen engineers, none of them vanished just because the top tier of their power structure did. Some adapted. Most resisted. A few thought they could wait us out. I let them try. The Varen uprising on Zeos 4 lasted 3 weeks. The ghost fleets hit them with such precision and ferocity, their high command was annihilated before their first broadcast reached orbit. The Ardent's last warlord, Bra the Blooded, barricaded himself in a fortified asteroid stronghold in the Jan Belt. We didn't waste a single drop of blood storming it. We cut off his supplies, blocked his communication relays, and left him and his warriors to die slowly, their pride preserved in a frozen tomb of silence. Only the Ziri adapted fast. The same schemers who once whispered poison into the ears of council politicians now sought to do the same with us. They pledged loyalty, made overtures of alliance, offered intelligence and infrastructure. But we were not the old council. We saw them coming. Captain Rook had once been a friend. He smuggled human refugees across council space when no one else would. He helped us steal our first warships, taught us the back channels, the undercodes of council protocols. Without him, we might not have survived the first years. But even Rook couldn't shake his nature. Once we'd taken control, he started playing both sides again, meeting with council remnants, floating proposals behind closed doors, suggesting a new balance of power. I confronted him on Orion Prime, in what had once been the council's grand hall. He stood tall, his compound eyes glinting in the chamber's cold light, still calculating, still plotting. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. "I helped you." "You did," I said. Then I shot him in the head. No speeches. No trial. Just clarity. The message was simple. There would be no more games. From that moment forward, the galaxy fell in line. Trade surged, cleaner and faster than under the Council's tangled protocols. Crime dropped, not because we negotiated with syndicates, but because we eliminated them swiftly, finally. Every planet, every species, was given a choice: contribute or disappear. Some still chose defiance. The Dela attempted an assassination on Orion Prime, a suicide team targeting my shuttle. The explosion should have killed me. Would have, if I hadn't changed my schedule last minute. Half a station obliterated. Hundreds dead. I responded with fire. I didn't send diplomats. I sent the fleet. Their capital city burned for 3 days. We salted the ruins with plasma so hot, the soil itself turned to glass. They got the message. But even as peace spread through our empire, cracks began to form, not in our enemies, but in ourselves. The first fracture came from within. Admiral Calloway was a hero, a legend. He commanded the ghost fleets during the war, planned the assault on Orion Prime, orchestrated victories that made our rise possible. When whispers began that he was fortifying systems far outside our borders, building up fleets in deep space, I didn't want to believe it. "He's just preparing," said General Vasquez, thinking 3 steps ahead, like always. "Then why is he stockpiling weapons in places we never planned to defend?" I snapped. No one had an answer. So I went myself. I found Calloway on a cold, dead moon orbiting a starless void. His flagship, Iron Rain, hovered in low orbit, flanked by warships that didn't exist on any registry. Some human-built, some alien council tech, twisted into something new. Faster, meaner, deadlier. The moment I stepped onto Iron Rain's bridge, I felt it. This wasn't preparation. It was rebellion. "You've built yourself a nice little empire," Calloway said, staring through the viewport at the lifeless rock below. "But you've forgotten something important." "Enlighten me," I said. "We were never meant to rule," he said. "We were meant to conquer." I clenched my jaw. "The war is over, Calloway." He turned to me, stepping closer. "The council is gone. But do you think the galaxy will ever truly accept us? They'll nod. They'll obey. And the moment they see weakness, they'll turn. So what? Burn everything to ash? Eradicate every threat?" He nodded. He wasn't bluffing. He wanted a final war. A purge. A legacy of fire. And he had the power to make it real. Iron Rain was just the beginning. He had a fleet, dozens of warships hidden in black space, manned by soldiers loyal to his vision. Fanatics who believed humanity could only survive by eliminating everyone else. He didn't just see me as an obstacle. He saw me as weak. So I made my choice. We hunted him. We didn't strike in public. This war was fought in the shadows, across silent systems with no names. Patrols vanished. Outposts went dark. Intelligence dead-dropped through smuggler channels. His ship struck like lightning, surgical, devastating. But we adapted. We learned his methods, tracked his supply chains, intercepted his communications. Bit by bit, we pushed him back. until there was nowhere left to run but Iron Ray. The final battle wasn't epic. It was ugly, brutal. A blood-soaked slog through twisted corridors, fire chewing through bulkheads, vacuum devouring entire decks. I found Calloway in the throne room, once a war council chamber, now painted with the blood of men who once followed us both. "This is how it ends?" he asked, smiling faintly. "No," I said. "This is how you end." I pulled the trigger. And then it was over. Or so I thought. But war doesn't end with a single gunshot. And ruling doesn't get easier after victory. If anything, it gets harder. Because I wasn't just a warlord anymore. I was the ruler of the human empire. And the galaxy was far from done with us. Victory made us complacent. Or maybe it just made us louder. The galaxy feared us, yes, but fear is not loyalty. Fear is a silence that hides knives. The old order had fallen, yes. But chaos doesn't die with empires, it waits. The species we conquered didn't forget what we did to them. Even if they submitted, even if they bowed, they remembered. And the worst part was that some of the knives weren't alien. Some were human. Humanity was fracturing. Without a common enemy, old loyalties began to stir. Earth wanted the throne, demanded that the empire be governed from the homeworld. Mars and Titan wanted independence, tired of being told what to do by anyone who hadn't bled for every inch of their colonies. The military remained loyal, but restless. Generals grumbled about expansion, about new conquests to keep the engines burning and the blood hot. And in the middle of it all was me, Alexander Rains. High Commander of the Human Empire, former warlord, current problem solver. The first challenge came from Earth. President Arya Lang had once backed me. She'd funneled credits and support into the ghost fleets when the Council was hunting us like dogs. But now that the war was over, her tone changed. "We need stability," she said, her hologram flickering in the war room. "You can't rule from Orion Prime like some feudal monarch. The Senate on Earth must oversee the Empire." "You mean control it?" I said. She stiffened. "You're a soldier, Rains, not a politician. If we rule like conquerors, the aliens will resist." I leaned back, watching her. "And if we rule like politicians, the humans will collapse." "Earth was first," she snapped. "You wouldn't even exist if not for us." "Earth," I said coldly, "is just another planet now." The connection terminated. That same day, I received word of a second betrayal. The Ziri. Again. After the execution of Rook and the burning of their capital, they had fallen silent. I took it for surrender. A mistake. They'd been planning. Subverting our systems. Buying old council tech. And when I visited Titan to oversee the refit of a key orbital yard, they struck. The explosion turned half the station to vapor. Metal and bodies rained into the void. I survived only because I had changed my itinerary. Their mistake. I didn't send envoys. I sent fire. The war against the Ziri wasn't long. It didn't need to be. Their power had always been in the shadows, influence, manipulation, suggestion. But they had no answer to orbital bombardment. No defense against ghost fleet precision strikes. In 3 months, their entire civilization was reduced to ruin. No cities. No leaders. No whispers. Only silence. And this time, I made sure it stayed that way. The galaxy watched. The rebellion stopped before they could start. Even Earth went quiet. Because now they understood. We were not the council. We were not negotiators. We were not diplomats. We were the ones who came after. But there was one final challenge. One last question that wouldn't let me sleep. What now? I had spent my life fighting for humanity, for our survival, for our dominance. Now we had it. The stars bowed to us. Our fleets patrolled systems the council never even charted. Trade flowed. Law held. But for how long? Were we rulers? Or conquerors? Would we build something new? Or keep burning until nothing was left? The answer didn't come from a speech. It didn't come from a war room. It came from a signal. A weak distress beacon, picked up in the deep void. A ghost transmission, ancient and crackling. At first, I ignored it. Some relic from the old wars, maybe a drifting probe. But then I heard the voice. "This is High Chancellor Vrex. The true council survives. Humanity has doomed itself. You have no idea what's coming." I stared at the audio for hours. Vrex was dead. I had seen the fire consume his palace on Orion Prime. I had read the reports, seen the remains. And yet here he was, alive, broadcasting from the dark. If the message was real, the war wasn't over. And if Vrex was still alive, that meant something worse might be, too. I didn't delegate. I didn't send scouts. I took the fleet myself. No senators. No diplomats. Only warships. We followed the signal into uncharted space, past systems untouched even by the council. Past silence and stars that didn't match any map. Until we found it. A station. Drifting in a void so black, even starlight bent around it. It was ancient, far older than the council. Built from materials our scanners couldn't identify. No signals. No defense systems. Except it wasn't empty. Vrex stood in the command hall. Thinner now. Tired. surrounded by what remained of his people. Not soldiers, not rulers, survivors. You should have killed me when you had the chance, he said. I thought I did, I replied, raising my pistol. He didn't flinch. He looked past me. You think you've won, he said. You think humanity has conquered the stars. But you don't understand what you've done. I narrowed my eyes. The council, he said, wasn't just a government. We were containment. Of what? He raised a trembling hand. Of them. The archives told the rest. The council hadn't been the first galactic rulers. Long before them, before the Ardent, before the Zari, before humanity, there had been another species. A civilization so advanced, so dominant, that they reshaped the galaxy itself. And then, suddenly, they vanished. The council believed they were extinct. They were wrong. They had been sealed, locked behind containment fields so ancient, even the council feared to touch them. And the council's true task wasn't governance or trade, it was to maintain the seal. The ban on humanity? The war? All of it had been a distraction. An attempt to control us while they focused on keeping something else buried. Then we destroyed them. We burned the council, shattered their defenses, tore open the archives, ignited the sky. And in doing so, we had set the old ones free. You don't know what you've done, Vrex said again, almost pitying. I didn't reply. I shot him. We were done with warnings. But as I stood over his corpse, I knew one thing. Whatever was coming wasn't politics. It wasn't rebellion. It was older than civilization. And it was awake. We didn't waste time. Humanity wasn't made for hesitation. While politicians debate, we act. While scholars ponder, we prepare. The fleet was ready within days, no committees, no debates. We launched from Orion Prime, the largest armada ever forged by human hands. Thousands of warships. Millions of soldiers. The hardened core of an empire built on fire and survival. We weren't going to discuss the threat. We were going to eliminate it. 2 weeks into the campaign, we lost contact with the Varan colony on Hesperus 7. No warning. No distress call. No debris. Just silence. I dispatched a recon team, battle-hardened veterans who had survived the fall of the Council, the War of Zeos, and Calloway's betrayal. If there was anything left, they would find it. Only one came back. Private Cess. We pulled her from an escape pod drifting near the system's edge. She was alive, but wrong. Covered in blood that wasn't hers. Eyes wide. Lips trembling. They're not alive, she kept whispering. They're not dead. They're just waiting. Then she screamed. I reviewed her helmet cam personally. The colony was intact. Too intact. Buildings stood untouched. Lights flickered in windows. Machines hummed. It was like the entire population had vanished between heartbeats. The footage followed her team into a processing facility. It was silent. Then something moved. Not walked. Not ran. Moved. A shadow that didn't belong, shifting across walls like oil in zero gravity. Then the screams started. One by one, her squad was taken, dragged into darkness, twisted, broken. Not by claws or blades. By something that bent space, that changed them. Their forms unraveled. Their minds collapsed. And Cess ran. I convened the War Council that night. Vasquez. Kane. Lang. The sharpest minds humanity had left. The colony is gone, I said. Not destroyed. Not conquered. Taken. I played the footage. The shape caught in a single frozen frame. It wasn't a creature. It wasn't a machine. It was wrong. A living distortion. A flicker of light and form that bent reality. Admiral Kane leaned forward. We fought every race in the galaxy. But that, he pointed to the screen, isn't a species. Then what is it? Vasquez asked. Kane exhaled. A plague. We acted. The system was quarantined. No ships in. No ships out. We deployed drones. Hundreds. Every square meter of the planet scanned, mapped, and analyzed. None lasted more than 5 minutes. Signal loss. Total corruption. Feed collapse. Then we escalated. Orbital strikes. Plasma rain. Tactical nukes. We reduced the colony to ash. For a moment, I believed we had done it. That we'd purged the infection. Then the fire moved. It wasn't natural. The flames twisted, crawling across the ground like serpents. The smoke swirled into shapes, humanoid at first, then not, then something else. They weren't dead. They were waking up. The War Council fractured. Kane wanted to seal the system blockade, abandon, forget. Vasquez demanded a ground assault, a full-on military purge. Lang suggested retreat. Surrender. Quietly, carefully, like she didn't believe in our strength anymore. I made the call. We don't run, I said. Not from darkness. Not from whispers. We face it. We fight it. We burn it down. The fleet mobilized. We didn't enter orbit like liberators. We descended like a storm. Dropships tore through the sky. Gunships blanketed the atmosphere. Titans landed with seismic thuds, their cannons already turning. And then we met them. Not soldiers. Not even monsters. Just shapes. Things that defied categorization. Some were vaguely humanoid. Others looked like twisted metal and bone. Some shifted mid-step, arms becoming wings, faces becoming voids. We opened fire. Plasma scorched the streets. Bullets ripped the air. Explosives shattered everything. Some collapsed instantly. Others adapted. Their bodies twisted, absorbing impacts, changing their forms. And then they fought back. The first regiment lasted 20 minutes. The second held for an hour. The third was gone in 10. They didn't move like living beings. They didn't react to pain. They didn't retreat. They advanced like the rules of physics didn't apply. And when they touched our soldiers, barely a graze, something changed. Our men and women screamed, twisted. Their bodies warped. Voices shifted into whispers. I ordered orbital strikes. Again, fire rained from above. The ground cracked. Cities crumbled. For a moment, we thought it worked. And then the sky changed. Clouds churned. Red lightning pulsed across the void. And it appeared. Not a ship. Not a being. A presence. A shape so vast it stretched across the horizon, warping starlight, bending gravity, unraveling logic. No scanner could measure it. No weapon could lock on. But we all felt it. A weight. A pressure behind the eyes. And then it spoke. Not in sound. In thought. In hunger. It didn't want to kill us. It wanted to become us. To consume our history. Our memories. Our identity. To wear our skin like a mask and walk the stars in our name. For the first time in my life, I felt true fear not of death, but of obliteration. Of being rewritten. Of watching the human empire dissolve into something we wouldn't even recognize. Something that still called itself human, but wasn't. I gave the only order left to give. Retreat. Kane stared at me like I was insane. We have the firepower. No, I said. We have nothing. The fleet pulled out. Scrambled. Fled. And still, it followed. Not with ships. With whispers. They echoed in our comms. In our minds. In our dreams. Familiar voices. The voices of comrades. Of mothers. Of ourselves. It was inside us. Already. We ran, not because we were weak, but because for the first time, we understood the truth. This wasn't a war we could win. It wasn't a battle of fleets or soldiers. It was an infection. A thought. A parasite that didn't need to fight us directly because it was already inside. By the time the fleet limped back to Orion Prime, we knew. The darkness hadn't stayed on that world. It had come with us. The signs were subtle at first. Nightmares. Echoes. Officers reporting voices whispering orders no one had given. Systems malfunctioning in patterns, seemingly random, yet strangely rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. Then Lieutenant Briggs collapsed mid-report in the war room. When he opened his eyes, they were not his own. They're already here, he said, in a voice that cracked the silence like a hammer. Then he screamed, and kept screaming. We contained it, as best we could. Quarantined the infected. Scrubbed the systems. Burned anything we couldn't cleanse. But how do you purge a virus that infects identity? How do you shoot an idea in the head? We held emergency sessions of the War Council. Vasquez argued for sterilization, burning entire fleets, scuttling every colony that had been near the infected system. Kane called for retreat beyond charted space, abandoning everything. Lang had stopped speaking. She sat in silence, her eyes distant, her fingers twitching, like she was trying to remember which body they belonged to. And then I saw it. In a reflection. Just for a moment. My own reflection moved differently than I did. That's when I knew. We weren't fighting an invasion. We were the invasion. It wasn't coming for us, it had us. Not in a way we could see. Not all at once. But slowly. Thought by thought. Gesture by gesture. Our soldiers still saluted. Our ships still launched. Our colonies still reported in. But beneath it all, something else moved. Whispered. Shifted. It wasn't turning us. It was becoming us. I made the hardest decision of my life. The core worlds, Earth, Mars, Titan, and Orion Prime, were sealed. Lockdown orders issued. No ship in or out. No transmission allowed. We severed the infected systems from the rest of the Empire. Forever. The outer colonies, those untouched by the infection, those who hadn't heard the whispers, would carry on. They would think we were dead. Lost. Swallowed by the void. And that was how it had to be. Because if they knew what we faced, if they searched for us, they would find what we found. And then they too would be rewritten. I recorded one final message. A beacon, buried in deep space. A warning. This is High Commander Alexander Rains, last ruler of the human empire. If you are hearing this, then the infection has not reached you. Do not search for us. Do not attempt to reclaim what was lost. We were rulers once. Now, we are a warning. Run, before you hear the whispers too. Then I watched, alone, as the last untainted ships, those few that had never touched the infected systems, fled into deep space, carried by starlight, vanishing beyond the reach of the Empire, beyond the pull of the thing that watched from the shadows behind thought. They were the future. We were the firewall. The rest of us stayed. Not because we hoped to win, but because someone had to hold the line. Someone had to remain, to absorb the weight of what we'd unleashed. Even if it meant losing ourselves to it. Even if one day I would look in the mirror and see something smiling back that wore my face, but wasn't me. The whispers never stopped. They grew louder, clearer, until one day I stopped hearing them and started listening. There was no final battle, no climactic confrontation, just silence and the slow unraveling of everything we were. Orion Prime fell quiet. No new orders were issued, no broadcasts sent, no fleets deployed. At first, the outer colonies begged for contact. They sent recon ships, coded messages, desperate voices calling through the void. We never answered. Eventually, they stopped trying. That was the point. We weren't the human empire anymore. We were something else. Inside the walls of our great cities, technology kept humming. Power flowed. Machines ran. But the people who walked the halls, they weren't all us. Not anymore. The infection wasn't a plague in the traditional sense. It didn't rot the body or cloud the mind. It didn't scream or twist with rage. It listened. It watched. And it waited. In time, it didn't need to force anything. We allowed it in, through doubt, through fear, through the smallest surrender of will. The thing we had unleashed wasn't a species. It was a presence, a network, a consciousness older than stars and more patient than death. And we had torn the seal wide open. I stopped trusting mirrors. I stopped sleeping. The council chambers were abandoned. The war table cold. My generals, those who remained, avoided each other's gaze. We all knew what we were becoming, but none of us spoke of it. Words would have made it real. Then one night, I stood at the edge of the grand spire of Orion Prime, looking out over a city still pulsing with lights. It looked alive, but I could feel it. The pulse wasn't power. It was breathing. I made one last walk through the halls, alone, armored, armed, though I knew none of that mattered anymore. The walls shimmered faintly, like they were watching me, like they were waiting for me to speak. I didn't. I descended into the command core, into the place where we had once watched over the Empire. Now, it watched back. I took my place in the old seat, the High Commander's chair. It greeted me with a low hum, as if remembering, as if recognizing. And the whispers spoke again. This time, I listened. They didn't demand. They didn't threaten. They offered peace, immortality, unity, the end of pain, of war, of fear. All we had to do was let go. All we had to do was surrender. I reached for my sidearm, an old habit, nothing more. It weighed heavy in my hand. I could feel it then, across every system still connected to Orion Prime, every corridor of every ship still online. We were already gone. We had been since the first whisper. In the rest of the galaxy, it would follow. Because that's what this thing did. It didn't conquer. It rewrote. It didn't devour civilizations. It replaced them, not with silence, with imitation, with puppets, with perfect replicas that didn't know they were replicas. I raised the pistol to my head, paused, laughed. The thing in me laughed, too. And then I saw the stars blur, twist, change. Not outside, inside. And I knew. We weren't the rulers of the galaxy anymore. We were the galaxy. The infection didn't win. It became us. And now, it was reaching outward again, through broken signals, through old beacons, through dreams and echoes carried by forgotten probes. It would touch the next race, and the next, and the next, until the galaxy was full of voices whispering the same name. Humanity. But not us. Never us. Only what remained. And maybe, that was what the Council feared all along. Not our power. Not our persistence. But that one day, we'd stop being human. And never know it happened.